We do not need to thank you. Now maybe your mic will work. So we don't need to refer to all the areas that say no change. So I'll ask Representative Oberg, who does the first sections, to take over from there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm actually going to move that we accede to the Senate for Category 1 changes. I will speak to that briefly if I get a second. Tracy? Representative Emmerich will second that. If I might speak to this briefly, I'm wearing a red dress. I mean, a green dress because I'm jealous of the Senate. You always have more money than we have. We're always facing smaller revenues, and most of these changes that you guys made were things that we pushed just because we were short of money. There were changes to the Department of Information Technology that needed to be done. Some of that relates to the creation of the new Department of Energy. That's page 1. If you look at page 2, you're looking at admin services. We concur with all of those changes. The New Hampshire Housing Board, we do those. The Office of the Child Advocate funds a full legal time aid and an assistant that we did not have money for. Department of Revenue Administration, you actually removed 2 audit positions that we had in because we needed the revenue from the additional audit positions. We're okay with that. Debt service is something that had to be changed after this left the House. You look at the total changes, they amounted to, for the biennium, $561,000. We are in
All right, let's
agreement.
do it page by page.
I just did those page by page.
Well, we need a motion on each page is what I
No,
want to do.
I-
So
I
we can be
moved
done with that,
category 1 entirely.
the whole category 1, which goes
I
on
did.
for,
No, it ends on page 4, and I just went page by page through all of those.
all right?
Correct. Page 1 through 4, correct.
Are you up to page 4? Yeah, you are.
Yes, I am.
All right. So that was your motion.
To
It was seconded by Representative Emmerich that we accede to the Senate position on all this, section 1. All members of the House in favor, raise your hand. And then over to the Senate.
All members of the Senate in favor, raise your hand.
Okay? That takes care of 4 pages. Thank you.
Okay, on page 5, we again have 2 Division 1 agencies, the judicial branch and the Department of Justice, which moves on to page 6. The Department of Military Affairs, we already moved, they were a 0. Department of Agriculture, no change. We now move to page 7. We are in agreement. There was a movement of a position in the insurance department. The Liquor Commission restored 20 enforcement positions towards the bottom. And then we have adjustments to the newly created Department of Energy on page 8 that flows over to page 9. In the Department of Corrections on page 9, we restore a position that we did not have funding for, which brings us to the bottom of page 10 because the summary funds are on 9 and 10, and these changes amount to $2,108,000, and the House exceeds to the Senate position. I will move that motion.
Second.
Motion and a second for those pages that deal with sections 2. Discussion?
Thank you. I'm not going to vote no on this, but I just want to mention that I think we lost an opportunity by not funding any of the teacher positions at the Department of Corrections, because most of these inmates are going to get out and they'll be more successful if they are educated and career worthy.
Did we
If
leave
I
it?
could respond to that.
Yes.
We funded, when the budget came to us, the governor had cut $6 million in the Department of Corrections for education and training. The House replaced that with $5 million. So we funded the majority of those teachers. I also at the time talked to Commissioner Helen Hanks, now that we have newer prisons with more computer technology. Many of the things that our prisoners do could be done with the offerings through VLAX, one of our charter schools that's virtual, that now does 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, up through high school. And so she felt she could, with the positions that were funded, because there were only, I think, 3 positions unfunded, but the remainder were funded, she could use the new technology with the new prisons and do that.
Further question?
Thank you. When the commissioner came to the Senate, she requested us to restore funding for 6 positions that were unfunded, 2 of which were filled. So we will be eliminating 2 active teachers with this budget.
Your reply?
The commissioner told me that those positions were now vacant. I don't know where they were when she came to you. I just called in last week and asked her if we had managed to fund all her filled positions and everything else was vacant. And she did tell me yes. So Senator Rosenwald, I don't know what she said in the Senate. I was not there that day. I did double check with her.
Well, we did make an important change after a 300-page audit on the Liquor Commission enforcement. We chose to have those people not be badged, and you restored it. Were you convinced that they had had proper attention to that audit items?
I'll speak for me personally. We did receive a lot of feedback from businesses who felt it was beneficial to continue to have these positions, and understanding that their audit was not satisfactory. I believe that notice has been given that I would expect them to do what they're supposed to do. And I would be prepared in 2 years from now, if we come back and see the same thing as we're seeing this year, to defund those positions.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none. All
We
right.
have a motion.
We have a motion and a second to, for the House members to accede to those items for section 2. All the House members in favor, raise your hands. And Senate,
Senate members in favor, raise your hand.
okay?
Mr. Chairman, Division 1 has 2 more pages, pages 15 and 16, if everybody could turn to those pages.
All right, we'll skip over page 10.
Yes, those belong
Or
to
11.
Division 2, and I'm sure Karen will do a wonderful job with that.
All right, we'll stick with the pages and go to Division 2, Representative Umberger.
No, this is still 15 and 16, it's Division 1.
No, but I want to go in the order of the pages.
Okay,
Keep myself from being confused.
all right.
We'll start with page 11, and then when we get to page 15, we'll do page 15. So Representative Umberger, starting on page 11.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move that we accede to the Senate for what they have done on safety.
Second,
Thank you. Safety had come in and asked for these positions from the House. And we were lucky if we were able to do things that they needed to be done, but we did not have the financial availability to add these positions. So I feel that these were the things they wanted and needed. I mean, not just wanted, but needed in order to operate the operate safety. So
Okay, A motion and a second for the House to exceed on the safety issues in HB1. Further discussion? Seeing none. Members of the House in favor of that motion, raise your hand.
Members of the Senate in favor, raise your hand.
Okay,
That brings us to page 15, Mr. Chairman.
very good. And we'll go back to Representative Ober.
I would move to exceed to the Senate on pages 15 and 16.
Motion and a second to exceed to the Senate position on pages 15 and 16, which deal with Business and Economic Affairs, Department of Natural and Cultural Resources, Department of Environmental Services, and the Pease Development Authority, which is no change.
So at the top of the page, again, this is the Department of Energy change. Some of the staff went from OSI to the Department of Energy or BEA, and this one moves one more staff member from Department of Energy into BEA. The second line restores funding for a position we did not have money to fund. They added funding, additional funding for the Small Business Development Center, which again, we did not have the money. They added money to tourism, tourism development fund, training funds, and they also funded the cost associated with relocating the OSI staff from OSI, which is going away, to BEA. When you look at natural and cultural resources, they again restored some money for positions we did not have. They reduced the funding in class 27. Department of Environmental Services called me after the budget had been approved and asked for the replacement mercury analyzer that you see. I told them to go to the Senate that we would approve, but we had already made the things. The Senate has added money to the Lakes Restoration Fund and to CERCLA maintenance. And as you see at the bottom, the total fund change is $3,561,120. We are in total agreement.
Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none. House members in favor of the motion, raise your hands.
Senate members in favor, raise your hand. Carries.
Okay, those sections are completed. Moving on to Department of Transportation, Representative Umberger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move that the House accede to the Senate position.
Second,
Okay, with Department of Transportation, the motion is for the House members to accede to the Senate position. Is there any further discussion?
I just want to say thank you for the things that they were able to do that I was not.
It is good that we were able to restore these positions for you. We were in a tight budget situation with the revenue situation we were given when we started our budget, but thankfully you had more money. So any further discussion? Seeing none, House members in favor of the motion?
Senate members in favor of the motion.
Okay, we're finished with transportation. Moving on to Health and Human Services, Representative Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to do this a little bit differently than my predecessors have just done this. I'd like to start on page 20 and just note a few things and ask some questions about the bigger items. For example, the Senate has agreed with us that the Sununu Center ought to be closed in the coming budget. You allocate an additional 8 months for that work to be done. And you've changed how the funding looks. You've done $9 million per fiscal year, and we put money in the first year and none in the second. So I would just like to hear your thought on why the extra 8 months and what the sense of commitment is on the part of the Senate to closing the Sununu Center.
I think we were all in agreement with the closure of it. What we needed to do is to provide the appropriate time for things to get in place, to transfer it over to closure. And we set the budget up accordingly.
Thank you for that. And then are you anticipating any reviews by the legislature over the coming 20 months or so to monitor progress towards closure?
I don't recall that we talked about that, but I would expect that if we set in place a closure date, that someone, the department or the legislature or both, could monitor it. Certainly that could be brought forward in legislation
Right.
at the beginning of the year too.
Thank you. One of your questions, Representative Edward, was about the spend and why we put the $9.5 million in each year. And looking at the historical dollar amounts, especially in 2020, and looking back to the work that I know that the House has done on this issue and looking at what actually needs to be spent for the number of children at the Sununu Youth Services Center, we felt that was a reasonable number to put in for the budget. As far as looking at how it's going to be going forward, the commission that was put in HB2, I believe, can monitor the closure and the timeline and how the timeline is being met.
Thank you for that. I would like to make a motion then to accede to the Senate position, but I would like to be able to go from rows 1 to row 48. Row 48 ends on page 23. And then because I have some additional questions after that point.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second that the House accede to the Senate position on the Health and Human Services. So that'd be page 20 through 23, was it?
Yes,
Line
sir.
48 on page 23.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So any further discussion in those areas? See, there might be some. Representative Rosenwald, do you want to have any further discussion? Senator Rosenwald, excuse me.
Just call me Representative.
It was once your title.
Right. I'm not comfortable with the amount of money on line 34, which is the, sorry, not that line.
That-
Yeah,
The
no,
adult
comfortable
dental
with that
benefits.
one. Sorry, line 22, the housing shelter program on page 20. Not only does this not include the prioritized need for that the department asked for to increase the shelter reimbursement rate. And we've had discussions about how we might appropriate federal funds through fiscal. I spoke with the commissioner just like an hour ago, and she said the department still did not have firm plans for how to fund or what to put in. And I think it's more emergent than just letting it go. But in addition, the amount of money contained within this line, and we did add $3 million, that's for separate programs, is actually a cut of $862,000 versus the current biennium. And I think we're just going to be in greater trouble with the homeless problem that we have if we don't even bring the next biennium up to where we've been this budget. So I'm not able to support this motion. Thank you.
Senator Hennessy.
Thank you, Chairman Weiler. I have a question for the LBA. Thank you. Can you talk to us about this line and if this 1.5 per fiscal year is an improvement over the last biennium, or if there's still a cut in there somehow?
Okay, I can turn this over to Kevin, who looked into that class line.
So to be clear, we're talking about line 21 and not line 20? Line 22.
Sure, and I'm looking up this accounting unit now. I believe with the addition of the 1.5 million, it is an increase over the previous biennium. What the department had stated, though, was that there was a contract line in there that was artificially low because of the way fiscal 21 was calculated. So that's what Senator Rosenwald is referencing. The overall amount in that accounting unit, though, for general funds is higher than it was in 2021.
Senator Rosenwald.
Thank you. Question for the LBA. So the shelter contract line, isn't that lower? If you were to break out what's in 7927?
Just one moment.
No pressure.
Sorry, I just have to find that line. So yes, actually, if you look at class 102, which is where the funding would go, and which is where the Senate added 1.5 million, there is a reduction in 22-23 from the 2021 budget. However, I believe that's a reallocation of funds from class line 102 to class 74 because there's a big increase in 74. So I may, in order to give you a definitive answer, I may need to check in with the department on this. But yes, if you're looking at class 102 in isolation, that is lower in 22-23 than it was in 2021.
Senator Hennessy.
Thank you. Just to follow up on that, for those of people listening, can you just explain what class 74 is? Is that the contracts line?
Class 24 is grants for public assistance and relief. So there was a significant increase in that class line from the last biennium and a significant decrease in class 102 contracts for program services.
Mr. Chair.
Senator
Just
Hennessy.
for discussion purposes, we saw that a lot in DHHS's budget where they switched between those two class lines over this biennium.
So this was not unusual. Anything further on discussion? So we have a motion to accept up through line or up
Up through line 48.
through line 48. House members, voting for the voting for the proposal, raise your hands.
Senate members in favor of the motion, raise your hand. We have 2-1.
All right. Motion passes. Okay, moving on, Representative Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to ask the Senate about line 50, the tobacco prevention and secession number. I don't recall this in the governor's budget. I do recall hearing about it in Division 3 and a request for us to add it. And I remember our conversation around this was that the testimony did not indicate that there was any evidence that this money was actually being effective in terms of reducing the rate at which people are smoking in our society. And so because we couldn't find any evidence to support it, we didn't support this program. And I'm just curious what the thought process is of adding this money back from what the House had.
Thank you, Representative, for the question. As we went through, particularly the HHS budget, we recognized that there were multiple areas that we really didn't know if they were being effective or not. So one of the things that we were trying to do was to address the immediate needs. Secondly, we are trying to address the root cause of some of those things. So recognizing that tobacco fell into that category where we really didn't have all the information we needed. We didn't want to vacate it and just let it run. But I know at least it's my intent over the next year and a half to be monitoring these programs so that as we go into the next biennium, we know what's working and not working. And I raised that question numerous times during the presentation by HHS as to how they define success in a program. So this is something that I would be following through on the tobacco as well.
Thank you very much for that response. I can relate to that. If I may, Mr. Chair, I would like to drop down to line 63 and just note that on line 63 and 64.
I just got a text, Mr. Chair, that we're not live streaming on YouTube.
Are we failing to live stream, technicians? All right, do we need to stop?
A brief recess?
All right, take a recess. Planned Parenthood, what he did was he put in $50,000. Hoping new agencies would pop up.
Well, Karen and I finally knew what was coming, so we spent hours with our budgets at home, going over, making sure we had everything. I emailed these guys, I talked to them.
The reason for that.
Jeb and I have been on phone, Chuck and I have been on phone. I knew it was in there.
Somebody.
Well, that's good, Jeb, but yeah. Oh, I think we're live now. Mike, are we live?
But they never put an incentive. Aggie works, let's try something different. But executive council never did anything, so we felt incentive money might change things. Yes, that's what they're discussing. Yeah. Like recess means.
Yeah, my mic's off.
I was trying to remember the difference. All right, we're not in a recess, we are in a break. Let me make that clear. Recesses require us to come back in 24 hours.
Fortunately, we were live streaming.
We're in a break. Taking a break for technical reasons.
Fortunately, you weren't live streaming.
That counts.
As I scrape my nose on the microphone. You know, anybody that doesn't have crazy.
Well, we're going through it too fast. We should refer to the sections and what, so on, but
Nothing, I mean, I'm never.
they're putting the pages up there. So they, yeah. Okay. So are we back restored? Okay. All right, I guess we're waiting for the YouTube section to be restored, but we are somewhat live streaming. As we are on break, waiting to get all these technical things resolved. Discussions that need to be doing. Some certain text that you and I would read.
Okay, T-balls everywhere by. You're making sure we're off there.
I'm trying to.
Okay, so we're pumping over 5 million. Phrase, crisis response on line 63. System of care. We'll just throw it. Let's see if I can find it. So I would just like, with divisions right next to that, I was trying to analysis. No, I don't think this come in and just tell us how you spend this money. And love to have some explanation. This is just a bunch of money being thrown into crisis. I don't know if any of us have ever gotten that. Right, longer than that, success, it's standing these out.
I agree with you too, especially since we don't have them. I'm always picky about these because I don't get them, because no one will bid on a contract in our area for them, but for the southern bigger areas, they. I can't remember what. It might be with the family